We are raising a significant alarm to say, attention, something is happening in Luxembourg and we need to be able to change. We need to be able to reform.
Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Michel Reckinger to the studio. He is, first and foremost, an entrepreneur, as he has been the CEO of Alfred Reckinger since 2001, and he is also the president of the UEL. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you for the invitation.
We know that your schedule is very busy. The goal today is not for me to get any scoops about what will happen in the next few days. I'll leave that to the traditional media. What interests me is for people to understand what is the UEL, what is its role, what does it do? How do you, as CEO of the UEL, analyze the current context and priorities? And above all, we're going to talk about the real economy. We're going to talk about the people who get up very early, who work very hard, and who generate the taxes that keep the whole system running. And I wanted to know how you assess the risks and opportunities. So let's start with the first question. Could you briefly introduce the UEL to me?
The UEL is an important association comprising several distinct federations and various chambers. Among these, the two largest and most prominent entities are undoubtedly the Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Trades. And then in addition to those, there are the various federations, specifically the Federation of Craftsmen, URESCA, ABBL, ACA, CLC, and finally FEDIL.
So it's very broad.
CLC is no longer called CLC, it's now called CC.
The Confederation of Commerce includes any business registered with the Chamber of Commerce or the Chamber of Crafts. So it covers almost the entire real economy?
The entire real economy. I think that we do not currently have farmers or the agricultural sector, but otherwise it encompasses absolutely everything else that you can imagine.
How many people currently work at the UEL?
UEL is a relatively small team, about 15 to 20 people working on very specific topics. I think that's important to mention. We don't deal with sector-specific topics. We don't handle industry because we have a subsidiary that covers industry. We don't handle crafts. We don't handle food. We don't handle energy. We have three fundamental themes. Labor law, that's why we participate in meetings with social partners. We focus on taxation and social security. I believe these are the three themes where our members said, these are cross-cutting topics, and in a way, it's good to have an entity dedicated to them. So these are truly the three themes that interest us. Today, for instance, if we are asked, for example, about what precisely happened with the housing situation, we did not act as specialized experts, but rather as effective coordinators between the various different entities involved, because housing is also a cross-cutting theme. Everyone has it within their scope. Banks have a different scope than artisans, but in some way, everyone can work on it. We coordinated the different positions. We weren't even spokespersons, but we truly took everything on and also served as the point of contact at that time for the ministry or ministries responsible for distributing tasks internally once again. That is the role of a coordinator. For the three topics I just mentioned, that is truly a role of specialization. Here we have in-house specialists and we handle the topics directly.
Perfect. The major federations pool their efforts on the big topics we always talk about, which are extremely important for the country's economy. What interests me, of course, as president of the UEL, is how do you analyze the current economic context? I think people notice it when they read the newspapers. There is always this search for consensus in Luxembourg. We don't like bad news. Personally, I'm a fanatic about statistics. I'm a fanatic about data. It feels like no one agrees on how to interpret the numbers. What does the UEL think about the economic figures today in 2025?
I think we have a bit of the same approach, a very similar methodology, in fact. We meticulously analyze the figures and data we receive, whether they come from Statek, Brussels, or significant international sources like the OECD, providing a comprehensive overview. We bring all of this comprehensive information together and diligently try to ascertain what the current analytical assessment is, what the present state of Luxembourg truly is, and precisely which essential projects we definitively need to actively work on so that we can effectively preserve our fundamental social model and continuously strive to remain the prosperous and unique country we are today. That is the ultimate goal we are striving for. And today, it is abundantly clear. In the span of just 5 years, we have unfortunately experienced 3 full years of economic recession, which means we no longer have any significant growth. That is precisely the fundamental core of our comprehensive analysis. We absolutely no longer have any meaningful growth. And today, everything we have in Luxembourg is based on a minimum growth of 3, even 5%.
We agree on that.
That is quite clear.
That's the economic model.
That's the economic model. Our economic model hasn't worked for the past 5 years. And in some ways, we can see it. We see it in the numbers. We see that jobs are no longer being created. So we're not generating employment anymore. That means we're not creating jobs anymore. There are more unemployed people. We're no longer creating employment. So this situation will inevitably impact our pensions because we no longer have sufficient contributions to adequately pay for them. We will undoubtedly see again this year that there will be more expenses than income within the pension fund. We observe this in healthcare. We see it practically everywhere. The economic growth is gone. The vital funds are running dry, and we are facing a significant risk of, we are facing a very real risk that our social model will no longer effectively work.
It has to be funded one way or another.
In some ways, we're not yet in the situation of France or Greece or Spain, fortunately, but we're raising the alarm to say, be careful, something is happening in Luxembourg, and we need to be able to change, we need to be able to reform, we need to look for reforms to get things moving again.
What's interesting is that I often use a public source, which is the PowerPoint that the UEL presented to the formateur in 2023. In this case, the formateur was Luc Frieden. This document is public. I made it even more accessible by publishing it on stripes.lu in the dataset. It's called PPT ULO Formateur because there you really provided a comprehensive overview, insurance, funds, industry, and it was extremely clear, based essentially on figures from Statec. So at some point, I truly think it would be good for everyone to agree on the reality of the numbers. We often hear the CGFP say that the reason they reject reform projects is because they don't agree on the figures. If we can't agree on the Statec figures, then there really is a problem. Now let's get back to your analysis, now the priorities. So if the UEL could influence the government's agenda, if there were 3 priorities, what would you tell the government? What objectives should they aim to achieve in the medium term?
Unfortunately, it's not that easy.
I like to believe that it's easy.
But indeed, there are, on all our important topics, so I would say work organization, taxation, and social security, these are all very significant areas.
Let's maybe take taxation, which is still fairly straightforward. We know that Mr. Roth has made efforts. We've seen a 1-point reduction in taxes, and we saw the reform of the tax brackets last year. We know he's working hard, he's getting results. His next priority, he just announced that there's a bill on stock options. What's the next step to support businesses? I think there are several things. Our members are not all exactly the same, so everyone truly has their own individual ideas, and everyone also has different priorities when it comes to the complex and often debated topic of taxation. Now let's be honest, the most important member is the ABBL, which means the banks and insurance companies. So what do they need? They need stability, of course, which is a fundamental requirement for any thriving enterprise or individual, but they also crucially need predictability in their operations and future planning. Furthermore, it is absolutely essential that they are able to operate within an environment where, particularly in terms of taxation policies, we can confidently return to a level that aligns with the average across European nations, fostering a more competitive and equitable landscape. Everyone believes or says, at least abroad, that Luxembourg is a tax haven, but if you look at the official rate, we're actually above the European average. Several percentage points above, in fact. The average is 21 and we must be at 24.
Here we've said it clearly, and the governor knows this too. I believe it's even in the coalition agreement. We need to return to the European average. Let's go for it. Let's take that step. I believe that
just 1 more percent and we'll reach the average.
What the government has effectively done in these initial first 2 years is to primarily and significantly focus its efforts on individuals, specifically on the private sector. Consequently, there have been substantial tax reductions. There have been numerous other beneficial measures, everything designed to genuinely make the...
That was the unusual thing a year and a half ago.
The truly unusual thing, yes, it's precisely this significant question of what we are discussing. The tax scale, yes, but also increasing the purchasing power of the private sector, so boosting purchasing power. A lot has been done, and it was done well. And now, today, is time to return to the foundations they spoke about. We need a strong economy for the country to move forward. Now, it's been 2 years. We've done things for the private sector. Let's now move in the broader direction of the economy. So let's proceed in this particular aspect. For taxes specifically related to financial institutions and banks, a distinctly different rate absolutely needs to be carefully set. There are some very specific and nuanced positions that require consideration. What can we do for the craft industry? What can we do about profit carry forwards? These are very technical matters, but they're on the table. And we're saying, here it is, now, sector by sector, this is what we can actually do. And this catalog was put together by the UEL, and we're going to discuss it with Minister Roth now to truly move forward. So these aren't, I would even say these aren't specific requests from the UEL. Rather, it's about implementing the coalition agreement. As we see it, you've outlined this in your coalition agreement. For us, that means going through point by point and in detail what we can actually do.
But if I take a step back, then if I understand correctly, the common thread among all your members remains corporate taxes. We know that the government has reduced corporate taxes by 1%, which brings us a bit closer to the European average. If I understand correctly, it would be good if they did it again next January. Another 1% and we keep getting closer. We're still above the average, but we're becoming a bit more competitive. That could be an easy priority.
This is a significant priority because it's also something important to showcase abroad. It clearly shows that something substantial is happening.
The famous attractiveness. Since you're talking about the ABBL, we know there's always a bit of misunderstanding. The ABBL is mainly retail banks and private banking. The real driver of the economy is actually ALFI, which is the funds. Today, we know that with interest rates rising in 2022 and 2023, banks have made record profits. But that's not the true heart of the Luxembourg economy. It's the investment funds that fuel an absolutely massive ecosystem. So let's continue this exercise with labor law. If there were a priority, what would it be? I'm an entrepreneur, an employer. Could it perhaps be absenteeism? We've seen the statistics skyrocket. Today, it's very easy not to come to work without any issue, sometimes for several weeks or even months. Is that the priority or is it something else?
Absenteeism sits at the intersection of work and social security, because in reality, it's social security that manages this absenteeism. So if we want to talk about it, yes, it's clearly a priority. There are solutions. So today there are solutions that are a bit more forceful.
For example?
So to explain this in more comprehensive detail, instead of simply stating that it's just about mere participation, let's consider the current practical situation. Today, when an employee, for various legitimate reasons, doesn't come to work, a substantial 80% of their regular and expected salary is fully and comprehensively covered by the mutual insurance scheme, which then promptly and efficiently reimburses the company for this significant financial outlay. The remaining 20% of the employee's salary is then directly and responsibly paid by the employer, ensuring a complete and fair compensation structure during periods of absence from the workplace.
For approximately a period of 60 days.
And then the fund takes over. But we could just as well say that until the fund takes over for the 63 days, we could split it 10 and 10. So why isn't it the sick employee who only receives 90% of their salary? So they contribute during illness, and well, in my view, it's not even antisocial or anything like that, because actually they have fewer expenses. So they're not going to restaurants, they're not driving. So in a way, there's a reason we can say, look, we can explain, you don't need to go to extremes, you can't, you're sick. So
you contribute to the fact that you're less productive.
There you go. And here, and we might indeed face significant disagreement from the various unions, but we know very well, because comprehensive studies have clearly shown us directly that 1 or 2 day absenteeism will completely disappear, thereby improving overall productivity and efficiency.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that.
Today we know that on Mondays, there are 3 times as many people out sick as on Wednesdays. On Fridays, I think there are 4 times as many people out sick as on Wednesdays. So there really is a problem, and I believe we need to address it. That's a somewhat tougher option. But on the other hand, we also already have rules and laws in place, medical checks. So let's make sure that medical checks really work, because right now they're not working well at all.
I think they've improved. There are a lot more visits, a lot more checks being done.
There are definitely a lot more administrative visits now.
And also more people being forced back to work with the message, you're not sick, go back to work, you won't be paid otherwise.
But today, I believe they're short about 15 medical examiners within the CNSA. So in some way, let's give them the resources they need. There will surely be more fake sick people who will end up returning to work. We conducted a thorough analysis, or more precisely, their dedicated team meticulously performed the analysis, and their conclusive findings indicated that simply by initiating a call on the very same day, immediately following the medical visit, which is now greatly facilitated by modern digitalization, they possess the capability to instantly access and review all pertinent information and records.
Very quickly.
Very quickly, but even before the person leaves the doctor's office, they can get a call saying, "You're at the doctor now, please come to my place."
Exactly. At this point, we know.
He said, no, I feel fine, I'm going back to work. So that's a fact. There are certainly people who are genuinely ill, and we never want to never say that everyone is just imagining their illness. So we must treat those who are truly sick with care, but there is clearly also abuse, and it's this abuse that needs to be addressed.
That's the whole challenge. It's the same thing with unemployment abuse. We know there are people who collect unemployment benefits while running a business on the side. It's about severely punishing fraudsters, but properly protecting those who truly deserve social protection. I think we can all agree that we're fortunate to have this protection. I just got back from the United States, where I spent a few weeks. You can really see what weak social protection looks like. It's disastrous. So it's about finding that balance. Just a quick question, a little provocation. Now, this is the business owner in me speaking. We haven't talked about the criminalization of bogus medical certificates. We all know, and it's more in Thionville, more in Arlon. I'm taking responsibility by saying this. We know exactly which doctors will give you a bogus certificate. It's good for their business. They have people, it brings them. There you go, it's a business. About a year ago, I mentioned the idea of sending in hidden cameras, and I was told, above all, don't do it because the medical board will sue you.
That's a bit of the issue here. We're in a quadripartite setup, so there's an extra partner, and that's the medical profession. And now we absolutely have to find the right and appropriate compromises to truly and genuinely look for effective and lasting solutions. And these essential solutions only come into being if everyone involved is completely open to openly addressing all relevant things and critical issues, and not at all hiding behind so-called, often misleading, truths. Today, we still far too often hide behind uncomfortable realities and inconvenient facts. A significant number, a doctor, the average number of sick days that a general practitioner issues in Luxembourg is around 3,000 days. That there's
10 per day, that's not a huge amount.
There are some who issue 10,000, and there are two who issue 100,000. So and 100,000, that's really only possible if the secretary already has it ready at the door and can.
The data exists.
The data exists, and we just need to do something about it.
And that's in Luxembourg. It's also the case in Thionville. We take the leave days granted from outside. So we are able to identify the offenders, and I would say the same thing to the medical profession. I should actually invite some leaders from the medical board. It's the same thing for them. We know that 99% of doctors are completely honest, and we need to protect them from the 1% who commit fraud and cost Social Security millions. So we've covered taxation, we've covered labor law. The third one, bonus.
We haven't covered labor law yet. So we've addressed security, a part of Social Security. So that's for the funds. Then there are still the pension funds, the AJCC, and that topic. And regarding the important work, I think that in the broader social pension system, without going into excessive detail, we genuinely wanted to make substantial progress on fundamental labor rights in order to make the essential collaboration between dedicated employees and their respective employers significantly easier and more efficient. I truly believe that I come from a family business background, and I absolutely know that my most valuable and main asset within my company is indeed my dedicated employees. So in a very real and significant way, and this is something that virtually 99% of all employers inherently know and understand, they would never, ever try to intentionally harm their absolute most important and valuable tool, their dedicated and hardworking employees. And in a way, the specific requests we've made, especially the crucial request to have a direct discussion with the individual employee without having to go through the national unions, this particular request would have greatly facilitated much clearer communication with employees. Today we're not there yet, so we still have laws that are very restrictive in this regard.
And outdated.
And it takes away our ability to organize our work, to properly arrange remote work, to properly schedule breaks, to properly plan our employees' work days, because there are constraints today that are no longer sensible. So in a way, it's unfortunate, but here we are, and we're working, we keep working to find solutions.
And there's an explanation that's actually very simple. I'm passionate about history, and we tend to forget that labor law and unions both originated from the same industry, steelmaking. In 1970, Luxembourg was either agricultural or focused on steelmaking. And we still very much have this culture. I was talking about it with Robbie Goals not long ago, and it's really interesting that in Luxembourg we still have a perception of work that's rooted in the steel industry. That means the employer provides schooling, childcare, retirement, and so on. Whereas if you go to Paris or Frankfurt, it's not like that at all. There, it's a transactional relationship. I earn my money, I develop my skills, I build a career, but if I'm not happy with my employer, I just go to another one. All of Luxembourg is still operating with this very steel industry mindset where the employer almost owes the employee a job. We're going to need to change that. In the meantime, we've become a leading financial center, and here there's a real culture clash that we can clearly observe. Maybe to wrap up, let's talk about the opportunities. We know that Luxembourg has always managed to reinvent itself, especially after 1974 and the steel industry disaster. How do you see the real economy picking up again in the coming years?
I think one of the major concerns we have today with all these crises, without listing every crisis we've faced over the past 20 years, is that, in a way, these aren't national crises, they're international crises. It's about Europe. I firmly believe that today, much of Luxembourg's very future, its destiny, truly depends on the overarching future of the entire European continent. And so, if Europe genuinely manages to profoundly reinvent itself, to truly and effectively overcome these significant constraints it has unfortunately imposed upon itself, we now have the remarkable Draghi report, which is absolutely fantastic and offers a clear path forward.
Very clear.
A government report that is very clear. So we absolutely need to move forward, and we truly need to build a much stronger Europe. And as soon as we have a stronger Europe, well,
Luxembourg becomes stronger.
Because we are international, we have this international standing. We are, as I said, in the Champions League of finance. So we are among the best in the world. And to stay among the best in the world, we can do a lot. But if Europe falters, we will have difficulty staying on course.
Absolutely. Maybe just a comment on that. We've also learned over the past 3 years that Luxembourg is extremely dependent on a factor it cannot control: interest rates. As soon as interest rates rise, our investment funds collapse because people put their money into term deposits. So we've seen that this has benefited the banks, which have posted record profits. But once again, our real secret to financing today is investment funds. So maybe our politicians should also ask themselves how to free us a bit from this enormous influence. As soon as interest rates rise to 5%, Luxembourg faces huge problems. In any case, thank you very much for taking the time, and good luck in the coming weeks.